Okay, well, I'm a master's student here at the California Institute for Human Science, and this is a project that I did with my co-author, Dr. Brophy, which we are publishing. We published it in the Journal for Animal Consciousness, and we're publishing it as an abstract at the ISSSEEM conference next week, too. So, can biophotons measure subjectivity changes in probiotic bacteria? Now, Dr. Mills gave us a nice little introduction. I was really happy. I thought, great, a nice introduction, first off, to probiotics and the microbiome and microbiota, which is great. So, bacteria, I've always had a penchant for biology, but I wanted to marry it with consciousness, and so I'm in the best place, right here, to be able to do that. Bacteria is microscopic life. We can't see it, but it's everywhere. From a biochemical understanding, bacteria, sometimes known as prokaryotes, are the oldest form of life on the planet. From an evolutionary perspective, we can see that a fusion of true prokaryotic cells make a eukaryotic cell. We're made of eukaryotic cells. And an example of this is looking at the cell itself. All cells have mitochondria except for red blood cells. The mitochondria have their own DNA. This suggests the fusion of two prokaryotic cells, bacterial cells, to make a eukaryotic cell. And without the mitochondria, we don't have a battery in the cell, so it's paramount. Did you know that bacterial cells communicate? I did watch a TED Talk, and that really stimulated all that we're doing here today. So bacterial cells talk. They broadcast to each other and they listen to each other. It's called quorum sensing, and it's really key. And in a pathogenic state, for example, if you are in an unhealthy state and the bacteria can become pathogenic, your bacteria will instigate a collective change based on the environment and the quorum sensing. So this is key, and it's very important. So when they reach a critical mass, they know about it through quorum sensing. And what do they form? A biofilm. They work as a team together. They take over the host. So this is key point. The other side of it, it's not all bad. We have the microbiome, which is basically bacteria that's found, for example, in this particular presentation is going to be about the gut. So the microbiome in the gut are also known as commensal cells. And commensal cells, they are found to be synergistic. They're helping the host. We're working together in symbiosis. And we need them and they need us. Commensal cells assist in food digestion, vitamin and nutrient production, and have an immune modulating effect. And Dr. Mills already kind of discussed that very briefly. And probiotics assist commensal cells within their work in the gut in this particular instance. It could be anywhere on the body. You get microbiome and microbiota in all parts of the body. Who would have thought that a microscopic life form and a conglomeration of them, because we're walking, talking microscopic life at the end of the day, would have such an important functional role in what it means to be a human being and to have well-being and to work symbiotically with us. Now that blew my mind. I don't know if it blows your mind, but it certainly blew mine. So if we look at the communication and the quorum sensing, which we know is communication between bacteria, could this be used by commensal cells and probiotics, and could photons be partly involved? So what are photons? We're swimming in an ocean of light. Light is fundamental to life. It's used in photosynthesis, and you'd be surprised, bacteria use it too. Some bacteria, like cyanobacteria, use light in a form of photosynthesis. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. Scientifically, light is electromagnetic radiation. It occurs as photons, and they're known as quantum packets of light. In biological systems, photons are called biophotons. So what are biophotons? Well, there are two general theories that discuss this and try and explain it. The first one is the biochemical theory. So when we have metabolic wastes as a result of cell released by the cell, we have biophoton emission. Chemical reactions require interaction with the surrounding electromagnetic field of photons. They don't decay and they are recycled. According to some research, catabolism results in photon emission. Catabolism means that you're taking a large molecule and you're breaking it down into a smaller molecule. Anabolism, according to some research, suggests that photon absorption occurs during that period or that process. And that's basically taking small molecules and making them larger, such as making proteins, muscles, organs, that sort of thing. And this theory suggests that toxicity or environmental extremes can scramble these processes, so creating stress. So you have greater biophoton release. Stress could be extreme cold, freezing, extreme heat, heating. So you can see how delicate this particular mechanism can be and how important it is. Now there is another theory that is I call it the cellular communication theory. It's also known as the coherence theory, and it's opposed to the biochemical theory. Coherence theory suggests that communication involves photons in biological systems. Pop's idea is that biophotons have a high degree of coherence, which means order. And it's required for clear intracellular communication, intracellular meaning within the cell. So if we have high-density populations of bacteria, that stimulates intercommunication between them, broadcasting, listening in, known as quorum sensing, which we've already looked at. And biophotons are said to be key ingredients to the inter, between, and intra, within, specific cooperation and essential for order for life. How does this show us bacteria, what they do, and do they have subjectivity? So what is subjectivity? Well, the mechanics of subjectivity and/or awareness remain undefined. Epistemologically speaking, subjectivity is difficult to measure, let alone replicate. So if the coherence theory is right, then photons may be elementary carriers of awareness, according to some. Subjectivity then may have something to do with information and communication. And this is important. And how, if they do have subjectivity, which obviously is controversial, in conventional thinking, it's not replicable, it's not measurable. But if they do, how are they affected by intention? And here we have Professor William Tiller here today, and one of the things that I picked up from one of his papers is that consciousness, intention, emotion, mind, or spirit can significantly influence a well-designed target experiment in physical reality. And we've already had Frank, my colleague, talking about AQUEL and integral theory, and this theory also suggests that there is an interconnectedness of all aspects of life. So this is an important point. And as an adjunct, integral theory is an example of a metasystemic view, which is accepting that all organisms have some sort of subjectivity or interiority, or a degree of. It's a marriage of epistemology and ontology, knowledge and experience. And even modern physics tells us that elementary particles may operate in such a way that even the smallest process may have some sort of connection to conscious-like aspects of reality. So this led me to look at if bacteria has quorum sensing and it uses that to communicate. And they're influenced by the environment and the numbers that there are and other aspects. It seems logical to investigate whether there is some form of subjectivity in bacteria. There are a few linkages between potential subjectivity and biophoton radiance, so this is what we were looking at in this particular research. And two of the hypotheses investigated were effects of intention of love and gratitude suggesting less stress, and the effects of intention of hate suggesting more stress. With less stress, you would have less emission of the biophotons. With more stress, more emission of biophotons. It was a simple design. It was also preliminary research, so something to build upon. We used here is the photon multiplier, here. This is the laboratory setup. It was a dark shielded room, and as you can see, the photon multiplier was covered with a number of covers, and that's what we used. It was a repeated measures design in the sense that we had a baseline that was pre, and then we would have exposure, and then we'd test it again afterwards. We used descriptor statistics because it was just in the preliminary stages. Now, there is a reason why I chose the materials that I did. I was privy to Quanta Biotica, which is a proprietary blend of Quanta Foods Association probiotics. The Quanta Biotica is a quorum, here's that word again, fermented product using novel proprietary fermented process. Now, I've been trying to find out what that is. I'm not allowed to know what it is, it's proprietary, but I would love to know, because as you'll see later on, it's significant. There may be some significance to it. The over-the-counter probiotic I just took off a shelf at a local grocery store. So when we look at the results, very briefly, these are baselines. The baselines are just looking at what would it be without. First of all, we looked at what it was like, just counting how many photons were being registered by the photon multiplier without the sample. Then with the sample, so we could create some baselines. And as you can see, look at the variation here. And the variation, this is over a period of time, and we have the mean photon counts per second. The variation within itself suggests that there may be something else that is affecting the baselines that we have not been able to understand or measure. And so we made sure that we took this into account, and within this preliminary research, to really understand that we need to do much more research to find out exactly what's going on with the baselines, and that's very important to make a point of that here. But what I found so fascinating, and I hope that you will too, is this. So here we have so this is the mean photon counts per second. These blue bars are all the baselines for these particular samples. The orange one is the over-the-counter. The green one shows the average photon count per second for the Quanta Biotica, which is said to be the coherent one, the one that I can't find out information about how it's made. But I want you to have a look at this area here. Now, if you notice, it does look quite uniform. It's quite similar. But if we go deeper into it, it's very interesting. Because when we look at, this is the love and gratitude in trial or exposure here. I hope I'm not in the way and you can see it. The average photon count for the O3 over the counter, we expected it to go down. The biophotons would be less stressed. They were more stressed. Right. The coherent Quanta Biotica went in direction of hypothesis, which means that we have less stress, less biophoton release. Now this was interesting research. And here, look at the hate right here, these two, and look at how these form a pattern. But if we look at the hate, again, the O3 over the counter and the hate intention exposure, less stress, biophoton release or radiation went down, not expected, in the opposite direction. There was an effect, but it's opposite to what we expected. However, the Q3, the coherent Quanta Biotica, had more stress in the hate intention. It was going in the direction of hypotheses. And so when we saw this, we knew that there was something going on that we needed to investigate further. But that is very interesting. In addition to that, what we did was we looked at microwaving. So if the probiotics, or if organisms that are alive release more with stress, such as high freezing it or very high temperature, let's microwave it. Let's find out if this is true, if what Pop's idea and what his model is accurate. Let's see if we can corroborate that. And we did. We looked at the microwave exposure for exactly the same samples, and they both released. The Quanta Biotica released slightly more, and the over-the-counter released more biophotons. They were going in the direction. If we go back here, we can see, I've got that, here's the microwave, and here are the trials. We did some on music also, which didn't yield too much, requires a little bit more research, but this I found to be very, very interesting. And I wanted to just spend a little time on that because it does show that visually we may have potential significant differences. All right, so implications. So I want to make sure everybody knows this is preliminary research. And as I go ahead with my studies, it's going to be a part of my PhD. So this hopefully will be taken further. What we did find is that there is a corroboration of Pop's idea of findings regards the effects of stress and biophoton intensity, which is very interesting within itself. It brings to light potential effects of intention on microbial organisms and therefore potential subjectivity. And even though the over-the-counter may have had some factors that were contributing to the way that it actually behaved, there was still a behavior, there was still something which was interesting within itself. So future directions, well, this study and any follow-up studies that come from it may elucidate the potential for further considerations relating to the body-mind complex, which is something that my colleague was talking about before, but also the inclusion of the microbiome. And I think that's very important given the fact that Dr. Mills was explaining to us that the microbiome is now becoming very important in health and dis-ease. And also to find out, if we look at quorum sensing, how does communication between and the broadcasting of the microbiome, how does that affect our emotional state? But how do we affect the emotional milieu within which the microbiome is found? Does it have an effect? Potentially it may. And that's key. Is it bidirectional? And we're here learning about science and spirituality. And that's part of what we do here at CIHS. And from a spiritual perspective, it may give an ontological insight relating to oneness, the interconnectivity of awareness intra and interspecies. Regardless of whether Einstein said this, I do love this quote, I have to say. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and forgotten the gift. But hopefully, with this institute and the research that we're doing, we're going to begin to marry this together. Thank you very much.